Hi, everybody. So my name is Billy. I'm going to be presenting on non-fungible fungible. Let me start my timer to see if I can get this right. Subtitle being 721-ish. So these are different non-fungible token projects beginning before the standard even existed, and a little bit of an outline at the code level with what makes them weird or different or slightly outside the standard and how that's played out over the years. So let me get back to here we go. Quickly about me, I'm Billy. I'm an artist and an engineer. I'm the founder of Clover's Network. I'm a technical advisor to a new project called Folia.app, which is a NFT kind of place for digital art editions. And I'm also the grants manager at the Interchain Foundation, which is the foundation for the Cosmos Network. I usually have a little bullet point that says I'm from Louisville, Kentucky as well, where I like to point out it's the home of bluegrass music, thoroughbred racehorsing, and bourbon whiskey. So if any of those things interest you, always reach out to me about them. But again, we're talking about non-fungibles. What is this non-fungibles? We're really going to talk about four things. First one is CryptoPunks, which was launched around July 2017. We're going to spend a minute talking about an early version of Clover's Network, which was my own project from August 2017. We're going to talk about the Terra Zero flower token from November 2018. And then we're going to spend some time talking about another non-fungible or slightly off fungible token that's I'm calling the mystery token drop until you get to hear more about it. So first, we're beginning with CryptoPunks. Again, that's July 2017, everybody's favorite early pre-NFT standard. And I wanted to go through some of the parts of the code to really compare what existed there, what was made later, what was missing. The sort of first message is the transfer, which was inside of CryptoPunks. CryptoPunks was really based, I think, off of looking at an ERC20 contract, and I'm sure we've got some experts in the audience that will be able to correct me on anything I get wrong about this, but this is a semi-informed technical deep dive. And the actual transfer, is basically unchanged. It's still address UNT 256. The word is transfer with a capital T. And of course, on Ethereum, the method signatures are the ABI packed and hashed method name, and then type. So that actually has the same method signature from the beginning, which is pretty cool. Those are, I'm looking at these. These are the events, of course. These aren't the actual methods themselves, but the event transfer was included. The events that you see now as well are approval and approval for all. Next chunk would be, they basically added what is similar to IREC 165, which is they have this standard, which is just a string. And so you can check the contract to say like, hey, is this a CryptoPunks contract? And if it returns CryptoPunks when you ask for standard, then you should assume, yes, it complies to the CryptoPunks standard. Nowadays, of course, we use EIP 165, which is the supports interface. And this is where you throw in bytes for interface ID, and it will return a Boolean, true or false, about whether or not it adheres to the standard. Here you can see it's checking to see if the interface ID is equal to the type ERC 721 enumerable .interface ID. I just pulled this out of Open Zeppelin contract. So there's a bunch of different interfaces that a smart contract should be able to return true for to sort of confirm that they self-describe as being compliant with different standards. CryptoPunks included name, symbol, decimals, and total supply. So this decimals, I think, is a bit of a holdover from the ERC20. What we also saw with Counterparty, where Counterparty was this proto version of ERC20 that was inside the call data on Bitcoin, and the first sort of real non-fungible tokens that came out of that were Counterparty tokens that had a total supply of 1. Another way to think of that is decimals 0, total supply 1. There's only one of them. And so CryptoPunks has that sort of as a vestige. It also was present inside the ERC20. But the name and symbol, we actually still have today. It's technically part of 721 metadata. And those are following the same sort of public method that returns a string. As we all know, when you declare a public variable underneath the hood, you're actually creating a getter function that returns the type. So it's essentially the same thing under the hood when you see this name, symbol, and total supply as methods instead of just variable names. So that's pretty cool to see those still sort of part of the standards. In CryptoPunks, you call transfer punk in order to transfer it. This is what I was getting incorrect at the beginning of this talk about the transfer event versus the transfer method. So all transfers were punks, so they named it transfer punk. And that's the 2 and the punk index. In the ERCC 721 standard, it actually doesn't use transfer. And I'm not sure what the story behind this is. I'd be curious if somebody here today will talk about it later. Maybe I can bring it up on a panel, whether it was to try to avoid confusion between ERC 20, which does use transfer instead of transfer from. But for whatever reason, that's what we're at today. We have the full transfer from. It also includes the from address, which in my opinion is a little bit redundant. I think it's easy enough to query who the actual owner is at any given moment. I feel like I've seen a 720 contract that removed the from. I'm not sure how important that actually is for widespread support. I would assume any wallet that has 721 support today only supports the transfer from though. And something that I'll talk a little bit about later is what it means to comply to a standard really has to do with how generous the different third-party interfaces want to be to accommodate. Quickly though, first I'll talk about one of the main things that I think breaks or makes it hard to support CryptoPunks as an NFT is the token URI. And in the following project or the project after that, you'll see that it's actually 100% compliant with 721, except for it's just missing that token URI, which is sort of the key ingredient to make it easy to show what the hell does this NFT look like, what the hell does this NFT do. And in CryptoPunks, they just put the hash straight into the contract itself, which is something you're totally encouraged to do today. There's not a standard sort of method for asking what the image hash is in the contract, although I know a lot of different projects provide that and try to encourage access and use and verification of whatever NFT media file is underlying that. But in lieu of guaranteeing that there is or should be an image hash for any NFT, today we use token URI. And if you want to get into a Twitter argument about what's the appropriate amount of decentralization and decentralized storage and redundant storage on an NFT, please go to my Twitter and see the thread where I say that premature decentralization is the root of all evil. I'm a big fan of the token URI being a legacy kind of Web 2.0 style URI, one that even can be updated and changed easily, and it should be updated and changed easily, at least until a point that it's stable, in which you maybe want to take the sort of like due diligence of like solidifying it in stone or whatever it is that's necessary. I think the flip side of that's really interesting is the fact that there's not nearly enough metadata modification happening as a creative space. I think that seeing the metadata change every time it's queried or every time it's transferred is something that has come across my purview that a couple of people are thinking about with their token project. And I think it's super interesting to see. Even talking to like real traditional digital art conservationists, like you actually don't want to chisel all of this stuff in stone because the artists change, the world changes. It might need to be updated with the gender or the artist formerly known as Prince. You know what I mean? You wouldn't have that labeled as Prince because that is no longer their name. And that's important for an artwork to be able to change in those ways. They should be, of course, predictable or outlined in a kind of format that makes sense for all of them, but I'm digressing. So anyways, what we have today is token URI. And what I wanted to say a minute ago about it's really relevant to the interface that's willing to support it is to sort of shout out all of the different marketplaces who support CryptoPunks because they make special catch statements or if-then statements that say, treat it like a normal NFT unless it's CryptoPunks, and then make sure that you do X, Y, or Z to make it show up correctly, which is huge, but it sort of also shows the power of that project. I'm going to try to speed things up. Early crypto clovers network. This was my own project early on. This was before the 721 standard existed either. This was just a couple months after CryptoPunks was really validating. I called them visual digital assets. They were also very much based off of ERC20s. This is a very early, version of Zeppelin's contracts using the standard token. You can see that it was really basically a fungible token with a reference to non-fungible games inside. Skipping ahead to flower token. So this is the one I mentioned earlier. This is from TerraZero, where they planted 100 tulips, and you could buy these tulips, and they had a very cool sort of machine vision tracking system. Whichever flower was growing the fastest received a portion of secondary sales. And they actually followed 721 standard all the way until it came down to token URI and supports interface. I think a lot of marketplaces probably skip the supports interface section where they're really confirming that it's there, and they're really just looking for that token URI, because as long as there's an image there, they're willing to show it. But again, that's sort of the beauty of the interface. If an interface is willing to figure out how to display it correctly, they will do that. For instance, I think Zora, instead of returning a token URI underneath their token, they actually return the hash of the image, which means that for that to show up correctly on OpenSea, they're also doing a special case where they say, oh, okay, trigger token URI unless it's Zora, and in that case, you should trigger this other method which returns the URL, because they've swapped them for their own reasons. I'm having a little trouble seeing where the questions would be coming at this point. I'm kind of locked into my screen, but I wanted to make sure that I had a couple of minutes at the end of this to talk about a new non-standard implementation that is the mystery token drop you've all been waiting for. And it's called Kudzu, presented by Folia.app. This is the first NFT virus. If you're not familiar with Kudzu, this is an invasive species, or actually don't know if it's invasive, but it does. It's a vine that sort of eats up the entire surroundings. It'll cover every single surface, especially in the American South. And I wanted to point out first what a basic NFT virus is. So typically you would use a transfer from method to move a token from one account to another account. However, you can override this method. And what would happen if you were to do that? Well, first you might want to confirm that the balance of the sender equals 1, which means that they have a token. If they do not equal 1, that means that they have not yet been infected by this virus. And the balance of the person you're sending it to, you want that to equal 0. And if not, that means that they've already been infected. However, if both of those required statements pass, you can create a new token ID, which in this case would just be simply the token supply plus 1, so incrementing every time. And instead of transferring it, you would mint a token to that recipient, which means that the from person is never able to remove that token from their address. All they can do is infect new people that they try to send that token to by transferring from. What we have today is Kudzu, the Folia virus. You can see an example of some of the generative artworks which result from transmission of this viral NFT. And on the left, you can see basically the logic that allows an inheritance of these traits, these eyes and these mouths, to be carried down from generation to generation. Essentially, we use the token ID and then we bit shift so that we actually secure 16 bits of space to record which eyes do they have between 0 and 31 and which mouth do they have between 0 and 31. Every single time they will inherit either the eyes or the mouth from the parent. And then once those have been created, you will use a pseudo-random number generator to figure out what the other two are. And then you will mint it to that new person instead of transferring it and emit an infection event. So just remember, Kudzu is contagious, but not dangerous, and you should let the vine grow. You should post your address or ENS name in the Folia.app Discord to get infected by the Genesis account, which is me. Today is the highest gas prices I think I've ever seen, so it's extremely painful, but I am prepared to spend my own money to infect you all as long as you turn around and continue the favor by infecting others. So please, go to Folia.app and click the join button to go to the Discord. The first 10 people who do it will guarantee get one, even though it's a very expensive transaction right now. Otherwise, afterwards, we may only allow infection from the Genesis account via OpenSea, where even though you can post one to sell, after the sale goes through and the seller gets paid, that token will not leave their account. However, the winner of that sale will get infected. So please enjoy this new format. Also take the concept and let it run. I want to see this spread. This is a whole new viral format of NFTs that I'm really excited to see what the rest of the world does with them.